Market Prospects, delivering timely information and education to prairie farmers for over 30 years. Market Prospects is brought to you by the University of Saskatchewan's Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics and these sponsors. Log on to marketprospects.usask.ca to view past programs and for information on upcoming programs.
For our Market Prospects interview this week, we zero in on the feed grain situation and outlook. Joining us from Edmonton is Neil Blue, Provincial Crop Market Analyst with Alberta Agriculture and Forestry. Mr. Blue, it's great to have you on Farmgate.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, let's begin with what's been happening with the supply, price, and movement of Western Canadian feed grains this year. And what do you expect for the rest of the current crop year?
Sure. The barley, as was the case with many of the crops this last year, had a record yield. So we had similar barley acreage to the previous year in 2015, about 6.4 million acres, and that created about 8.7 million tons of barley is the latest estimate. As factor giving uncertainty to the crop situation and particularly feed grain situation is the remaining unharvested acres out there. And the unknown too is what's going to happen with those acres as we go into spring. As far as barley prices, the prices fell during the year into harvest. They rose somewhat into the end of the year and then actually fell off a little bit. Current barley prices in the Lethbridge area are around $3.50 a bushel. And that's kind of where we sit with that barley situation. Because of the poor harvest weather, there was plenty of feed grains created this last harvest, and so there's lots of competition out there from competing feed grains.
So what are your Western Canadian feed barley projections for the upcoming crop year then?
Well, based on the mediocre price that we're experiencing with barley, I think that we'll see acreage drop this next year, maybe as much as 500,000 acres on barley, back to the lows that it was down to a couple years ago, or maybe even a new low. And I think that'll result in, using average yields, a bit of a drop in production next year. So based on that expected lower production of barley, despite the premium yet for malting barley of maybe around $1.50 a bushel or so for this next year's forecast, I think that we'll see lower barley supply and possibly some improvement in prices. I'm projecting a Lethbridge price for this next year of about $3.50 to $4 a bushel.
So what's expected in the Western Canadian oats market for the rest of the current crop year, and what do you project for Western Canadian oat acreage production and prices in 2017-2018?
Well, oats has been a pleasant surprise this year on demand, and that demand is mainly from the U.S. We've seen those milling oat prices in the range of $2.75 to $3.25 a bushel, depending where a person's at on the prairies. And the feed prices are very much variable on oats, anywhere from $1.50 a bushel up to almost as much in some areas as the milling oat prices, with the competitive factor for the good quality oats that are sometimes in demand out there. I think that we could see oat acres rebound next year and maybe be up about the 500,000 acres that we'll see barley drop by. And that's just because of the strong demand that we're seeing and the relatively good prices for oats. Looking into the next year, I think we'll see oat prices remain fairly firm and provide good opportunities for some profits for farmers.
What's the importance of feed grains to the ag economy in Western Canada, and how do you see feed grains competing in crop rotations in the future?
Well, feed grains are certainly an important factor in Western Canada with the large livestock numbers that we have here. A bit of a negative has been the lack of rebound in cattle numbers across Western Canada since the lows that we had. The other thing is that the last 2 winters have been relatively mild, so we've seen likely a drawdown in the demand side on the feed grain side. So that's a bit of a negative. A positive, though, has been an increase in the hog numbers, somewhere in the area of 2 to 3%.
What factors should prairie farmers consider when looking at growing barley and oats in 2017?
Well, certainly I think a lot of farmers certainly pay attention to prices. Another factor that remains to be seen again is that spring harvest that is yet to be done in those areas with unharvested acres, and how that's going to work out timing-wise with the seeding plans. So that's a bit of an unknown. Other factors, of course, are rotational factors, both from the point of view of crop and also things like herbicide. Insect and disease forecasts and based on last year will also be factors that farmers will consider in making their seeding decisions.
Well, it will be an interesting year ahead. Great information, Mr. Blue. Again, thanks for taking time to come on Farmgate.
You're most welcome. Thanks for having me.
Farmgate will be right back after a brief commercial break.